Hi there. Welcome to day 2 of our story, Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lynn. We had a nice 15-minute beginning yesterday. And before we do anything, I'd like to review a little bit. I always have to take notes. Hopefully you do that too. But I did just a few things here. First of all, we have several characters, Ma, Ba, and Min Lee. And we know these characteristics about Ma. First of all, she sighs with self-pity, kind of rolls her eyes, and always wishes for more than she has. And Ba, who is patient and kind, everybody's best dad, tells wonderful stories about traditions that they've had. Min Lee, she's very spirited and willing to do whatever. Her name means quick thinking. And if you recall from yesterday, she buys a goldfish with almost all the money that they have to bring fortune to her house. We know a couple things too that are kind of important to the story, but we probably don't realize it yet. But first of all, they live at a place called Fruitless Mountain, and it's called fruitless because it bears no fruit. It's gray and dull all the time. We also know that Jade Dragon is the cause of that fruitlessness. Jade Dragon was punishing the earth because somebody complained that she brought too much rain. And her children, the 4 children that she had, became the great rivers of China to give water to the earth. And she wants to reunite all of her children. And once she reunites them, then maybe Fruitless Mountain won't be fruitless anymore, which is very important. And one of the questions that Min Lee had for her dad after he told her a story was, what questions or how can we find the answers to some of our questions? And the big thing that he always says is, that's a question for the old man of the moon. And so I'm sure we'll hear about him sometime today too. So we're going on to chapter 3. But the goldfish was real, and when her parents returned from the fields for dinner, they were not at all happy to learn that Min Lee had spent her money on a goldfish. "How could you spend your money on that?" Ma said, slapping the rice bowls on the table, "on something so useless. And we will have to feed it, and there's barely enough rice to feed us as it is." "I will share my rice with it," Min Lee said quickly. "The goldfish man said it will bring fortune to our house." "Fortune," Ma said. "You spent half the money in our house." "Now, wife," Ba said quietly. It was Min Lee's money. It was hers to do with what she wished. Money must be used sometime. What use is money in a bowl? "Oh, it is more useful than a goldfish in a bowl," her mother said shortly. "Well, who knows," Ba said. "Maybe it will bring fortune to our house." "Another impossible dream," Ma said, looking at the plain rice in her bowl with bitterness. It will take more than goldfish to bring fortune to our house." "Like what?" Min Lee said. "What do we need to bring fortune here?" "Ah," said Ba, "that is a question you'll have to ask the old man of the moon." "Oh, the old man of the moon again," Min Lee said, and she looked at her father. "Ba, you said you would tell me the old man of the moon story again today." "More stories?" Ma said, and her chopsticks stuck inside the empty rice bowl resentfully. "Haven't we had enough of those?" "Now, wife," Ba said again, "stories cost us nothing." "And gain us nothing as well," Ma said. There was a stony silence as Ba looked sadly into his rice bowl, and Min Lee tugged at his sleeve. "Please, Ba," she said. Ma shook her head and sighed, but said nothing, so Bob began. And this is the story of the Old Man of the Moon. Once there was a magistrate who was quite powerful and proud. He was so proud that he demanded constant respect from all of his people. Whenever he made a trip out of the city, no matter what time of day it was, people were to leave their homes, get on their knees, and make deep bows as he passed, or else face the brutal punishment of his soldiers. The magistrate was fierce in his anger as well as his pride. It is said that he even expected the monkeys to come down from the trees to bow to him. The magistrate was hard with his subordinates, or harsh with his subordinates, ruthless to his enemies, and pitiless to his people. All feared his wrath, and when he roared his orders, the people trembled. Behind his back, they called him Magistrate Tiger. Magistrate Tiger's most coveted wish was to be of royal blood. His every decision was crafted for that purpose. Every manipulation was part of a strategy to achieve acceptance into a royal family. As soon as his son was born, he began to make trips and inquiries to gain influence in hopes that he could marry his son to a member of the imperial family. One night, as the magistrate traveled through the mountains, again on a trip to gain favor for his son's future marriage, he saw an old man sitting in the moonlight. The old man ignored the passing horses and the carriages, the silk brocade and the government seal, and simply continued reading a large book in his lap, placidly fingering a bag of red string beside him. The old man's indifference infuriated Magistrate Tiger, and he ordered the carriage to stop. However, even the halting noises did not make the old man look up. Finally, Magistrate Tiger exited his carriage and went to the old man, who was still engrossed in his book. "Do you not bow to your magistrate?" he roared, and the old man continued to read. "What are you reading that is so important?" the magistrate demanded, and he looked at the pages of the book. It was full of scribbles and scrawls that were not of any language the magistrate knew of. "Why, it's just nonsense written here." "Nonsense?" the old man said, finally looking up. "You fool, this is the book of fortune. It holds all the knowledge of the world, the past, the present, and the future." The magistrate looked again at the marks on the page. "I cannot read it," he said. "Of course not," the man said, "but I, the Old Man of the Moon, guardian of the Book of Fortune, can read it, and with it I can answer any question in the world." "You can answer any question in the world?" the magistrate scoffed. "Oh, very well. Who will my son marry when he is of age?" The Old Man of the Moon flipped the pages of his book. He said to himself, "Yes, here it is. Your son's future wife is now the 2-year-old daughter of a grocer in the next village." The daughter of a grocer?" the magistrate spat. "Yes," the Old Man of the Moon continued. "Right now she is wrapped in a blue blanket embroidered with white rabbits, sitting on the lap of her blind grandmother in front of her house." "No," the magistrate said, "I won't allow it." "It's true," the old man said. "They are destined to be husband and wife. I myself tied the red cord that binds them." "What red cord?" the magistrate demanded. "Do you know nothing?" The old man said. "I tie together everyone who meets with these red strings." The old man sighed, holding this bag of red string. "When you were born, I tied your ankle to your wife's ankle with a red thread, and as you both grew older, the line became shorter until you eventually met. All the people you've met in your life have been brought to you by the red cords that I tied. I must have forgotten to tie the end of one of the lines, which is why you are meeting me now. I won't do that again." "I don't believe you," the magistrate said. Well, believe it or don't believe, the old man said, standing up and putting the big book on his back. We have reached the end of our thread, and I will leave now. The magistrate stared in dumbfounded silence as the old man of the moon walked away up the mountain. Crazy old man, the magistrate said finally. What a waste of my time. The magistrate returned to his carriage and continued on. But as they drove through the next village, he saw an old blind woman holding a baby girl in front of a house. The girl was wrapped in a blue blanket embroidered with white rabbits, just as the old man of the moon had said. Magistrate Tiger burned with anger. I will not let my son marry a grocer's daughter, he vowed. So after he arrived at his guest house, the magistrate secretly ordered one of his servants to return to the grocer's home and stab the girl with his knife. That will take care of her, he thought to himself. Many years later, Magistrate Tiger had his dream fulfilled. He was finally able to obtain a match for his son with one of the emperor's many granddaughters, and his son would inherit the rule of a remote city. On the wedding day, Magistrate Tiger bragged to his son about how he had arranged the marriage and outwitted the old man of the moon. The son, who was not at all like his father, said nothing, but after the wedding ceremony sent a trusted servant to find the grocer's family and to make amends. In the meantime, he became acquainted with his bride and was happy to find that they were both pleased with each other. He found his new wife beautiful, the only oddity about her being that she always wore a delicate flower on her forehead. Dear wife, he said, why do you always wear that flower? Even to sleep, you never remove it. It is to hide my scar, she said, touching her forehead in embarrassment. When I was a child, no older than 2, a strange man stabbed me with a knife. I survived, but I still have this scar. And at that moment, the trusted servant came rushing in. Master, he said, I made the inquiries for you. In a flood many years ago, the grocer's family perished except for a daughter. The king of the city, the emperor's 9th son, then adopted the daughter and raised her as his own. And that daughter is your wife. Do you see how I mentioned when we started this how things always kind of come back or have connections? Or in this case, they seem to be tied by strings, whether they're red or what color, but they are tied. So this book is full of those connections. So always be paying attention. And you might come across one of those things where a light bulb goes off in your head and says, I know about that. So anyway, that's the end of the story about the old man of the moon. So the old man of the moon was right, Minli said. Well, of course he was, Ba replied. The old man of the moon knows everything and can answer any question you ask. I should ask him how to bring fortune to our house, Minli said. He would know. I'll ask him. Where can I find him? They say he lives on the top of Never-Ending Mountain, Ba said, but no one I have ever spoken to knows where that is. Well, maybe I can find out, Minli said. Oh, Minli, said Ma impatiently. Bringing fortune to our house, making fruitless mountain bloom. Oh, you're always wishing to do impossible things. Stop believing stories and stop wasting your time. Oh, stories are not a waste of time, Ba said. Stories, Ma said, slapping her hand against the table, making the water of the fishbowl sway as she stood up and left the table, are what wasted money on goldfish. Minli stared down at her rice bowl. The first few grains left sat like precious pearls at the bottom of her bowl. Ba patted her arm. Eat all your rice, daughter, he said, and with shaking hands, he scooped the last of his own rice to feed the fish. Let's go ahead and do chapter 4. That night, Minli could not sleep. Ma's words echoed in her ears, and when she closed her eyes, she saw Ba's hand shaking from hard work feeding the goldfish. Ma is right, Minli thought to herself. The goldfish is just another mouth to feed. I can't let Ba feed the goldfish. Ma and Ba work so hard for every grain of rice. Ba shouldn't have to feed the goldfish, too. Minli slipped quietly out of her bed and crept to the table where the goldfish was. They stared at each other, and Minli knew what she had to do. Quickly, slipping on her shoes and jacket, she took the goldfish and left the house. It was late. The village was quietly asleep, and the stars were above filled the sky like spilled salt on dried seaweed. Minli's footsteps seemed to hush the night as she made her way toward Jade River. At the edge of the river, Minli looked at her goldfish one last time. The moon shone above, so even in the darkness of the night, the fish seemed to burn a bright orange. Its black eyes sparkled at her. "I'm sorry I can't keep you," Minli whispered. "I hope you will be all right in the river." And with those words, she emptied the bowl into the water. And for a moment, the fish seemed shocked and still, like a flickering flame on a match. And then it wiggled in the water and swam in circles, a joyful fire twirling in the water. Minli watched it and sighed. As the sound faded into night, Minli realized it was an echo of her mother's impatient, frustrated noise. Ma will never stop sighing unless our fortune changes. But how will it ever change? Minli asked ruefully. I guess that is just another question for the old man of the moon. Too bad no one knows how to get to Neverending Mountain to ask anything. The fish stopped swimming and looked up at Minli. "I know where it is," it said. The female voice was high and soft like the wind whistling through the reeds of the water, and Minli stared. "Did you say something?" she asked. "Yes," the fish said. "I know how you can get to Neverending Mountain and ask the old man of the moon a question." "You're a talking fish?" Minli asked. How can you talk?" "Oh, well, most fish talk," the fish said, "if you're willing to listen. One, of course, must want to hear." "Well, I do," Minli said, enthralled and eager. This is just like one of Ba's stories. She bubbled with excitement. "How do you know the way to Neverending Mountain?" "I've swum all the oceans and rivers except one," the fish said, "and on my way to the last, the goldfish man caught me. And I despaired in his cart, for I have seen and learned much of the world, including the way to Neverending Mountain. Since you have set me free, I will tell you." "You've swum all the oceans and rivers?" Minli asked. The question spilled like overflowing water. "Which river haven't you seen? Why have you traveled so much? Where is Neverending Mountain? Oh, this river is the one I have not swum," the fish interrupted, "and I have waited a long time to see it. So I would like to start as soon as possible. You can ask the old man of the moon all your questions. Let me tell you the way to him so I can be off." Minli nodded, asked no more, and she realized she was having a conversation with a goldfish, which was very unusual. So she decided to listen. And that's the end of our lesson today. We'll pick up tomorrow at chapter number 5.